Caroline adjusted her navy blue blazer and took a deep, steadying breath as she stepped up to the podium in the packed briefing room of the Washington, D.C. Press Center. The room buzzed with anticipation. The murmurs of journalists, the clicking of cameras, and the low hum of expectation filled the air. Today, Caroline wasn't just representing the administration. She was about to defend her integrity, her message, and her commitment to the truth in an environment that had long been a battlefield of competing narratives. For years, Caroline had mastered the art of answering tough questions with measured confidence. Yet today felt different. The tension was palpable, each journalist waiting for a moment to catch a slip, to provoke a reaction. The crisp air in the room, laced with unspoken challenges, was almost a tangible presence. Caroline's eyes scanned the crowd, noting the familiar faces of reporters she'd encountered many times before, as well as a few new ones eager to carve out their niche in this charged arena. She began her opening remarks with a calm yet authoritative tone. "Good afternoon, everyone," she said, her voice resonating with clarity. "Today we have important topics to discuss, policies that directly impact the American people. I'm here to provide you with clear, factual answers. Let's keep our focus on what matters." Almost immediately, hands shot up from the sea of journalists, and the room seemed to lean forward collectively. Among them, one reporter in particular, Gabrielle Summers, a well-known liberal voice with a reputation for pushing boundaries, raised her hand. Her dark hair framed her determined eyes as she leaned forward, her notebook ready to capture every word. "Caroline," Gabrielle began, her tone incisive, "do you believe that the current policies are intentionally designed to marginalize certain communities? The data suggests disparities that simply can't be ignored. Can you address this with a simple yes or no?" Caroline paused, the question hanging in the charged air. She had encountered tough questions before, but Gabrielle's piercing inquiry was different, relentless in its pursuit of a single, definitive answer. "I have answered that question already," Caroline replied steadily. "Our administration's focus is on ensuring that every American benefits from our policies, regardless of background. If you have questions related to today's topics, I am happy to address them." Gabrielle's eyes narrowed. "But you didn't actually answer my question," she insisted, her voice rising slightly. "Is it your position that these policies are suppressing marginalized voices? A simple yes or no." A ripple of tension passed through the room. Caroline's gaze shifted briefly toward her team, silently conveying that she was ready to move on. "I'm not avoiding the question, but I must remain on topic," she said, her voice firm. "We're here to discuss today's policies. I have already clarified our stance." The room fell into a brief, uneasy silence. For a moment, every eye was fixed on the unfolding exchange, a spectacle of wills between a determined reporter and a seasoned spokesperson. In that silence, the tension grew thicker, as if the very air was charged with the promise of conflict. A murmur ran through the journalists as another reporter, Martin Reyes, a veteran known for his incisive questions, attempted to interject, "Caroline, don't you think the repeated deflections are worrisome? The American people deserve straightforward answers." But before Martin could complete his thought, Gabrielle's voice cut through again, sharper and more insistent than before. "Why is it so difficult for you to give a straight answer?" Gabrielle challenged, her eyes locked onto Caroline's. "Is it because the policies are inherently flawed? Or are you simply trying to control the narrative?" Caroline's eyes flickered with a hint of irritation, though her tone remained controlled. "I believe in addressing questions with facts and relevance," she replied. "If you have further inquiries about today's policy discussion, please direct them accordingly. Otherwise, I will not entertain questions that stray into sensationalism." Gabrielle's smirk only deepened, and she leaned even closer to the microphone. "So, you're saying that you're refusing to answer because you have something to hide? That's a no comment, then." A heavy silence fell once again, punctuated only by the clicking of cameras and the scribbling of pens. Caroline's posture shifted imperceptibly as she gripped the sides of the podium, a silent signal to her security team that she was prepared for what might come next. "I have answered your question, Gabrielle," she said evenly. If you don't have a question related to the issues at hand, I will move on. At that moment, the atmosphere in the room shifted from tense anticipation to something more explosive. Journalists exchanged glances. Some looked intrigued, others visibly uncomfortable. It was clear that this wasn't just another routine press conference. This was a showdown that would reverberate far beyond these walls. In the midst of the mounting pressure, Caroline made a decisive choice. Rather than allowing the confrontation to spiral into endless debate, she signaled to her aides that it was time to take control of the narrative. With one final, measured look at Gabrielle, she said, "I'm not here to engage in games. I'm here to present the facts." And with that, she motioned to another reporter in the back to ask a question. Yet Gabrielle wasn't finished. "Do you believe that by evading my question, you're silencing legitimate dissent?" she pressed, her tone dripping with irony. Caroline inhaled sharply, her gaze steady. "This is not about silencing dissent," she explained. "It is about maintaining focus and ensuring that this forum remains a platform for substantive discussion. I urge you all to consider that accountability is a two-way street." The words were delivered with a calm determination that resonated with many in the room. As the cameras continued to record every nuance of the exchange, the tension reached a boiling point. The entire room seemed to hold its breath, aware that this moment would soon be dissected and debated in media outlets and on social platforms. Caroline knew all too well that the next few minutes could very well define the public's perception of her, and by extension, the administration's commitment to transparency. After a long pause, Caroline's eyes met those of her aides. In that silent exchange, she communicated her next move. "I'm taking this moment to release the unedited footage of this exchange," she declared. "The full context is available for the American people to see for themselves." There was a resolute firmness in her tone, as if she knew that facts, unfiltered and raw, were the only way to counter the narrative that was rapidly forming. The decision to release the footage was bold, a move that would either vindicate her actions or become fodder for her critics. In that instant, the press conference was transformed from a simple Q&A session into a pivotal moment in the ongoing battle over media integrity and accountability. As Caroline continued with the rest of the briefing, she couldn't help but sense that the true contest was just beginning. Later that day, as the corridors of the White House buzzed with post-conference discussions, Caroline retreated to her office, a sanctuary of quiet resolve amidst the storm of public opinion. Her aides gathered around, their faces a mix of admiration and concern. "The clip is already trending," one aide reported, scrolling through the relentless flow of notifications on their phone. "Some are calling it a masterclass in press management, while others are portraying it as an authoritarian move." Caroline listened quietly, her eyes fixed on the screen. The digital world, with its swift judgments and viral narratives, was a force to be reckoned with. "I expected this," she murmured, her voice carrying a mix of resignation and determination. "In this era, facts are often twisted to serve political agendas. The key is to stay true to what's right." Her mind raced through the implications of the footage's release. Every clip, every edited segment, could be spun in countless ways by competing factions. But Caroline was not one to be easily intimidated. She had navigated the treacherous waters of media manipulation for years, and she was prepared for the backlash that was sure to come. That evening, as she prepared to leave the briefing room, Caroline took a moment to reflect on the day's events. The confrontation with Gabrielle had been intense, a collision of ideologies and communication styles. Yet in the midst of the chaos, Caroline had maintained her poise, her commitment to clarity, and her belief in the power of transparency. "This isn't just about me or the administration," she thought. "It's about the integrity of the public discourse." The next morning, headlines erupted across the nation. Social media platforms buzzed with clips of Caroline's firm responses, with hashtags like #StandWithCaroline and #PressConferenceShowdown trending for hours. Analysts debated the implications of releasing the unedited footage. Some hailed it as a victory for accountability, while others argued that it was a calculated move to control the narrative. In newsrooms from coast to coast, Opinions clashed as reporters dissected every moment of the tense exchange. Gabrielle Summers, the reporter at the heart of the confrontation, found herself at the center of a media maelstrom. In interviews on cable news and talk radio, she argued that Caroline's refusal to give a straight answer was emblematic of a larger trend, a deliberate evasion of accountability by those in power. What we witnessed today, Gabrielle stated in a fiery interview, was not just a refusal to answer a question, but an attempt to shut down the press and limit the voices of dissent. Her words, though impassioned, only fueled further debate about the role of the media in holding the government accountable. Meanwhile, other reporters, like Martin Reyes and Evelyn Carter, a young journalist known for her incisive commentary, lent their voices to the discussion, each interpreting the events through their own ideological lenses. Some argued that Caroline had skillfully diffused a potentially volatile situation, while others maintained that her measured approach was merely a facade for evasion. The debate soon spilled over into op-eds, panel discussions, and even comedy sketches on late-night television, each segment dissecting the nuances of the exchange with the fervor of a cultural phenomenon. Back at the White House, Caroline's office became a war room of strategy sessions. Her team pored over every reaction, every comment, analyzing how best to steer the conversation in the coming days. "We knew this was coming," one aide remarked, flipping through a digital dossier of trending social media posts. The moment she locked eyes with security, you could tell she was ready to make a statement. Caroline listened intently, her mind already several steps ahead. She understood that in today's media landscape, controlling the narrative wasn't just about answering questions. It was about framing the context, providing unvarnished facts, and letting the truth stand on its own. In a private meeting later that afternoon, Caroline addressed her team with quiet determination. "We need to be proactive," she said, her voice low but resolute. "Let's release additional context, unfiltered interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, everything that shows our commitment to transparency. The public deserves to see the full picture." Her words were met with nods of agreement. It was a risky strategy, but Caroline believed that, in the long run, truth had a way of prevailing. Over the next several days, the narrative continued to evolve. Television news segments replayed the footage repeatedly, each time highlighting different aspects of the exchange. Social media influencers from all corners of the political spectrum weighed in, some praising Caroline for her composure and others criticizing her for what they saw as a refusal to engage with legitimate criticism. In the midst of the uproar, Caroline maintained her steady focus. Every time her phone buzzed with a new notification, whether of praise or condemnation, she reminded herself that this was the price of leadership in the digital age. One evening, as Caroline sat alone in her office reviewing the latest public reactions, she couldn't help but reflect on the nature of her role. Being the public face of an administration meant more than simply reciting prepared statements. It meant navigating a labyrinth of media scrutiny, public opinion, and political maneuvering. "This is the reality we live in," she whispered to herself. "Every word, every gesture is amplified, dissected, and replayed. But if we stay true to our principles, the truth will eventually out." Her thoughts were interrupted by the arrival of her senior communications advisor, Thomas, a seasoned strategist with decades of experience in crisis management. "Caroline, you handled today brilliantly," Thomas said, his tone sincere. "The way you deflected that question and then turned it into an opportunity for transparency. There's no one else who could have done it like you." Caroline managed a small smile, grateful for the support, but aware that the battle was far from over. "Thank you, Thomas. But we need to be prepared for the backlash. The media will twist every detail, and we must be ready to counter it with facts." Thomas nodded. "I've already started drafting a follow-up statement. We'll emphasize that this isn't about evading accountability. It's about focusing on the substantive issues that affect the American people. We're going to show them that our commitment to transparency is unwavering." Caroline's eyes hardened with determination. "Good. Let's make sure the truth remains the center of this discussion." In the days that followed, the administration's digital team worked tirelessly, disseminating additional footage, interviews, and context. Caroline was interviewed by several major networks, each time reiterating her commitment to clear, fact-based communication. One interview, in particular with a prominent national news anchor, became a defining moment. When asked directly about the confrontation with Gabrielle, Caroline's response was calm and incisive. The role of a press conference is not to serve as a platform for personal vendettas, but to provide clarity on policies that impact millions. I stand by my actions because they were in service of that goal. Her words resonated with many viewers who appreciated her no-nonsense approach. Yet, critics continued to label her tactics as evasive, accusing the administration of using the incident as a means to silence dissent. The public discourse grew increasingly polarized, each side entrenched in its interpretation of the events. But amidst the clamor, one thing remained clear. Caroline's decisive action had shifted the narrative in a way that forced every observer to confront the complexities of modern media, accountability, and the nature of truth. Weeks later, as the initial firestorm began to subside, a follow-up briefing was held. The atmosphere in the room had shifted. While the tension was still there, it was now tempered by a sense of cautious optimism. Caroline stood at the podium once again, her posture confident, her eyes clear. Today, I want to address not just the issues that have been raised, but also the broader question of what accountability means in this digital age, she said. Transparency isn't achieved by silencing critics or by hiding behind edited sound bites. It's achieved by presenting the facts, unfiltered, and allowing the public to make informed judgments. She continued, outlining the administration's upcoming initiatives aimed at fostering greater media access and accountability. We are opening the briefing room to independent voices, podcasters, bloggers, social media influencers, so that every perspective can be heard. This is not about controlling the narrative. It's about democratizing the conversation and ensuring that the truth is always at the forefront. Her words were met with a mixture of applause and skeptical murmurs, but Caroline remained undeterred. She knew that change, especially in the realm of public discourse, was never easy. As the briefing concluded, reporters began filing out, their faces reflecting the complex mix of admiration, frustration, and determination that had defined the day's events. Outside the press center, the city pulsed with the energy of a nation deeply divided yet united by a common desire for truth. Caroline lingered for a moment, gazing out at the busy streets of Washington, D.C. The weight of the day's events pressed upon her, but within that weight was also a fierce determination. She had taken a stand not just for herself or her administration, but for the very idea of accountable governance in an era where every moment could be manipulated, misinterpreted, or turned into a headline. In the days and weeks that followed, the incident became a case study in modern media dynamics. Political commentators dissected every nuance of the exchange, while academics and media experts discussed its implications for press freedom and governmental transparency. Caroline was invited to speak at conferences and panels, her experience serving as a testament to the challenges and the importance of clear communication in turbulent times. In every forum, she emphasized that while the battle for narrative control was fierce, it was ultimately the unvarnished truth that would prevail. One crisp autumn afternoon, as Caroline prepared for another round of press briefings, she sat in her office reflecting on how far they had come. The events of that fateful day had not only redefined her career, but had also set a new standard for what it meant to be a public servant in a digital age. The unedited footage, now widely circulated, had sparked important conversations about accountability, truth, and the power of unfiltered information. It was a reminder that in the age of viral media, authenticity was the most potent weapon of all. Caroline looked out the window at the historic buildings of Washington, D.C., and allowed herself a moment of introspection. Every day, she mused quietly, we are reminded that leadership is not about avoiding difficult questions. It's about facing them head-on, even when the consequences are uncertain. That morning, as the first rays of sunlight broke over the horizon, Caroline knew that tomorrow would bring new challenges and fresh questions. But she was ready, armed with her unwavering commitment to transparency and a deep-seated belief in the power of facts. She would continue to navigate the stormy waters of public opinion, one truthful step at a time. And so, the legacy of that tumultuous press conference lived on, not just as a snapshot of conflict, but as a turning point in the conversation about media integrity and governmental accountability. Caroline's resolute stand had become a symbol of a new era, one in which truth was not the casualty of political gamesmanship, but the very foundation upon which democracy was built. In the end, the story wasn't just about a single press conference. It was about the enduring power of honest communication in a world where every word could spark a revolution. As the years passed, Caroline's reputation grew, her name synonymous with courage, clarity, and unwavering commitment to the truth. Though the path was never easy, and the media storms continued to rage, she remained a steadfast beacon of integrity. In every briefing, every interview, she carried with her the lessons of that day, a day when the truth was laid bare, when every challenge was met with resilience, and when the unedited facts ultimately won the day. Caroline's journey is a reminder that in our modern age, leadership demands not only the ability to navigate complex media landscapes, but also the courage to stand firm in one's convictions. It is a story of perseverance, of facing down adversity with grace and resolve, and of knowing that even when the world seems divided, the truth remains the one constant that can unite us all. And as long as there are those willing to listen, to question, and to seek the unvarnished facts, there will always be hope for a future where accountability and transparency are not just ideals, but lived realities. In the end, as Caroline continued her work, she often thought back to that decisive moment at the podium. It had been a turning point, a moment when she chose to release the truth unedited and raw to the world. And though the media would forever debate the merits of her actions, one thing was indisputable. Caroline's commitment to the truth had reshaped the conversation. In a landscape rife with sensationalism and manipulation, her stand had lit a spark that would continue to burn brightly in the hearts of those who believed that only the unfiltered truth could pave the way to a better, more transparent future.